Here's 6 cherry shrimp tank mates that work well in most aquarium setups. I personally keep all of these tank mates with cherry shrimp or the yellow cherry shrimp morph in my own tanks, and I've never had any problems, but your experiences may differ. So first up we have neon tetras, and I have 9 of them in my 29-gallon tank right now. Neon tetra are one of the most popular fish in the hobby, and they are cheap and widely available, but they can have health problems. I've never once seen my neon tetras interact with my cherry shrimp in any way, and the neons just tend to swim around the middle or bottom layers of the tank looking for food. My cherry shrimp are usually on the Java moss on the back of the driftwood, so it is very rare that I see neons even close to them. Neon tetra usually max out at just over 1 inch in size, so they'd probably struggle to eat an adult or even a juvenile cherry shrimp, but their mouths may be large enough for baby shrimplets. As I mentioned earlier though, I've never once seen any of the fish eat a baby shrimplet in this tank, even though they are currently everywhere. The best thing about this combination is that they work well in a wide range of popular tank setups and cheaper tank sizes. There's also plenty of water parameter crossover between neon tetras and cherry shrimp to ensure that you can keep them both in the tank without issue. Next up we have chili rasboras, and these are probably the safest tank mate out of all of them featured in this video, and I currently have 10 of them in my 29-gallon tank. Chili rasboras do seem to have had a recent spike in popularity within the fish keeping hobby, but it can be a little tricky to find them for a decent price, and I have to order them online because none of my local pet stores have them in. These guys really are tiny, and they max out at well under 1 inch, making them a nano fish, so they're actually smaller than adult and potentially even juvenile cherry shrimp. Due to their tiny size, my chili rasboras are very cautious in the tank, and they do tend to avoid interacting with anything. They usually just bunch up and shoal around the top and middle layer of the tank, avoiding any driftwood or anything like that where the cherry shrimp are, because they think predators may be hiding there, and they basically just look for food all day. Their small size really would make it difficult for them to eat anything but an absolute brand new fresh cherry shrimp baby that's been born within the last couple of days, but they're never near the Java moss ever. They're always avoiding it, and they're always in their own space. Just like neon tetra, chili rasboras do work well in most tank setups, and again there is a lot of water crossover between the water parameter requirements of cherry shrimp and chili rasboras. Next up we have Corydoras, and I specifically keep Corydoras aeneus, but I would guess that most types of Corydoras would be totally fine with cherry shrimp. There are several different Corydoras aeneus morphs on the market right now, but in my area the majority of pet stores will have the albino and bronze morph available for cheap. My Corydoras are the largest fish in my community tank, and they usually max out at around 3 inches in size, but they really don't seem to care about anything that's happening in their tank. I know that I've joked about this in other videos, but my Corydoras usually have 2 different modes. The primary mode that they spend most of their time in is scavenging for food on the substrate, and their secondary mode is literally just relaxing and chilling out in their tank. And in my experience, they really are oblivious to everything going on in their tank. I'm not sure if they just genuinely don't care, or if the albino variant do have problems with their eyesight, but they just go around bumping into everything and cracking on with their day. My Corydoras are almost always on the substrate looking for food, so it's very rare they're anywhere close to the cherry shrimp. That said, there have been times when my Corydoras have swam near the cherry shrimp of different sizes, and realistically they just don't pay them any attention. They just keep going in the direction they were going in and let the cherry shrimp do its own thing. I have seen my Corydoras accidentally scare my cherry shrimp a couple of times, like in this clip. I really don't think that it's intentional at all. The Corydoras are just swimming around, they know there's food in the tank, and they speed over to it while the cherry shrimp are feeding and accidentally scare them. One of the best things specifically about Corydoras aeneus is that they have a pretty wide range of suitable water parameters, so there's plenty of crossover with cherry shrimp, so you should be able to keep them both in the same tank. But other types of Corydoras may have slightly different water parameter requirements, so always do your research. Next up we have honey gourami, and I was initially worried about keeping honey gourami in the same tank as my cherry shrimp because I've seen various people online say there would be problems. In my experience though, I've never once had a problem, and I decided to make a dedicated video on keeping honey gourami and cherry shrimp in the same tank because of so many people saying there would be problems. I've never once seen the honey gourami in this tank try and eat a cherry shrimp, although one of them is a little curious and he does like to have a little look, but that is at everything that's going on in the tank, not specifically the cherry shrimp. I also have this clip where both of the honey gourami that I kept in this tank swim directly past a baby cherry shrimplet, and you can see it's tiny. They could easily eat it if they want. They're very, very close, but they just let it live and swim off. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that honey gourami definitely don't eat any of the cherry shrimp in my tank, but I've never seen it happen, and I have seen multiple occasions where there's been baby cherry shrimp right next to them and they haven't even tried to eat it. They've just gone about their their own business. Now honey gourami max out at around 2 inches in length, so their mouth is probably big enough to eat juvenile and baby cherry shrimp with ease if they want. Just like the other recommendations I've previously mentioned, there is plenty of crossover in water parameters between the honey gourami and the cherry shrimp, so it is easy to keep them in the same tank. Next up we have guppies, and I used to keep guppies in my 29-gallon tank with my cherry shrimp and I never once had a problem, but I have since moved my guppies into my 12-gallon tank with some yellow cherry shrimp, and again there has never ever been a problem with the guppies paying any attention to the yellow cherry shrimp. Two things to note is that the 29-gallon tank didn't have baby cherry shrimp in it when the guppies were in there, and in this 12-gallon tank there are no baby yellow cherry shrimp in there. So my experience is strictly with adult shrimp. Another thing I want to say is that I only keep male guppies. I don't keep any females, which can be double the size of a male guppy, so they would have a far easier job of eating a juvenile or baby cherry shrimp if they wanted. But in my experience there really is minimal interaction between the guppies and the yellow cherry shrimp in their tank. Sometimes they'll get close and have a little look, but realistically I think they're just more curious than anything else and they just go about their business and leave them alone. Guppies are another very popular fish within the hobby, so most pet stores will sell them and they usually are quite cheap for what you're getting. One potential problem with guppies is that they do tend to prefer slightly harder water that is slightly above the recommended water parameters for cherry shrimp. Now I try and balance this as best I can, but I have seen other people online report that they keep their guppies in softer water without issue, but it's not something I've got much experience in. The next tank mate is actually Armano shrimp, and I really do think Armano shrimp and cherry shrimp go well together, and I've got another video on my channel going over keeping both of these. In my experience, Armano shrimp and cherry shrimp or other types of Corydoras really are the dream team when it comes to algae cleanup crews. I had a major breakout of green and brown algae in my 12-gallon tank last month, and I added some Armano shrimp and some yellow cherry shrimp to the tank along with a couple of clethon snails, and the majority of the algae was gone within 2 weeks. Armano shrimp are commonly recommended for their algae eating abilities, and in my experience they do seem to eat a wider range of food, but I honestly do think cherry shrimp or other types of Corydoras are overlooked and they definitely put work in with the brown diatom algae. Now unlike the fish, my Armano shrimp do usually hang around right next to my cherry shrimp, but it is very rare I've seen them interact. There has been times when I've seen the Armano shrimp bullying the cherry shrimp near food like this clip here, but it is rare and it's not like the Armano shrimp's damaging the cherry shrimp, it's just a brute force push to get rid of them, and the cherry shrimp usually just goes off and feeds somewhere else and leaves the Armano shrimp with the food. Other than that, in my experience, they are great tank mates to keep together, especially if you're having any algae issues, or you want a cleanup crew for leftover food but you don't want something like Corydoras in your tank, and there is enough crossover with the water parameters between the two species to keep these together without issue. Personally, I wouldn't recommend Betta fish as a tank mate for cherry shrimp because my female Betta has been known to eat the cherry shrimp in her tank. I actually have a more detailed video on keeping Bettas with shrimp, but I know that some Bettas are a lot calmer than mine and that some people do keep Corydoras and cherry shrimp in their Betta tank with minimal issues, but personally I'm not planning on doing that.